ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षातात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जताव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence today's evening Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. And as usual, I'm reading from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, which is a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry between 1900 to 1950. From various books, this has been compiled by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji, and we have been looking at the question answers that has been asked between 1936 to 1950. In the last week question, we looked at what exactly is the self was the question that was put to Bhagavan. We will continue to look at the second question, which is connected to that question itself. I'll read the last week's question answer and then continue with this week's question answer. After that, we will have a 20 minutes meditation, Atma Vichara, following which we will have a talk by our present president, Sharda Akka, on the same subject of Atma Vichara from Ramana Gita. And finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. So looking back at last week's question answer, devotee asked, what exactly is this self of which you speak? If what you say is true, then there must be another self in man. To which Bhagavan had replied, can a man be possessed of two identities, two selves? To understand this matter, it is first necessary for a man to analyze himself, because it has long been his habit to think as others think. He has never faced his I in the true manner. He does not have a correct picture of himself. He has too long identified himself with the body and the mind. Therefore, I tell you to pursue the enquiry, who am I? You ask me to describe this true self to you. What can be said? It is that out of which the same of the personal I arises and into which it would have to disappear. When we looked at this question answer, we took at by Bhagavan's grace, we looked at the analogy wherein if we were in that dream state of ours and we are looking for or we are really tired of the dream state and we want to escape that state. And if somebody appears in that dream state and says, you are dreaming, wake up, and in the waking state, none of these things exist, we would say, we would not even be able to comprehend what that state is in that very paradigm or within that limitation of the dreaming. If we try to comprehend what the person is asking us to wake up and think of what waking up is in that dream, we will never be able to experience, because in that dreaming state, the waking cannot enter, cannot exist, cannot coexist. Only when the dreaming totally disappears, then the waking would become so natural, and there would be the realization that the whole thing that happened just a moment back was only a dream. No, it was not it wasn't any reality at all. So that is what Bhagavan asked us to ponder about in the last week. And that's what he said, that this whole dream state has to disappear. Likewise, this whole waking state, and it's all the process, whatever we have seen, knowing, doing, thinking, all of that had to disappear to really experience the real self-awareness, wherein this totally doesn't exist, this entire waking state. So, to which, in the continuing in the same line, the devotee is asking the next question: disappear? How can one lose the feeling of one's personality? So we can now see how whatever the dreamer had that paradox, how to stop dreaming. It is the same sort of paradox that is coming to the devotee here, who is representing all of us, and he's saying, disappear? How can one lose the feeling of one's personality? If I, the one who wants to know the self, completely disappears, who would be there to know the self? It sounds as though that, and how can this guy disappear? Disappear into what? Becomes the question. So to which Bhagavan is beautifully answering, Maharshi says, the first and foremost of all thoughts, the primeval thought is the mind of every man. Thought in the mind of every man is the thought I. It is only after the birth of this thought that any other thoughts can arise at all. It is only after the first personal pronoun I has arisen in the mind that the personal pronoun you can make its appearance. If you could mentally follow the I thread until it leads you back to its source, you would discover that just as it is the first thought to appear, so is it the last to disappear. This is a matter which can be experienced. Very beautifully told. I'll repeat what Bhagavan has given the answer. The first and foremost of all thoughts, the primeval thought in the mind of every man is the thought I. It is only after the birth of this thought that any other thoughts can arise at all. It is only after the first personal pronoun I has arisen in the mind that the personal pronoun you can make its appearance. If you could mentally follow the eye thread until it leads you back to its source, you would discover that just as it is the first thought to appear, so it is the last to disappear. This is a matter which can be experienced. So we can, if we summarize this, what Bhagavan is saying here is this whole of this waking state is nothing but only thoughts. It is nothing but only a thought. Like the dreamer was only nothing but a continuous thought based imagination where there was the dream world, the dreamer, and all the other persons who are there. Everything just disappears when when the dream ends. Likewise, this whole of this waking state, Bhagavan is saying, has appeared because instead of attending to our real nature, we have decided to give rise to a thought in the form of I. I, that means I as this individual, I as this body and mind. That is the idea, the concept to which we have first given arisen. So therefore, it is the first division that has taken in the truth. And Venkateshji very beautifully put it in this morning message that there is absolutely no division in that one self. And yet, because we see the division, we see it so difficult to remove. So, since there is no division at all, and we have given horizon to that one first division in the form of an thought, which is called the individual idea or the individual concept. And because of that, the third person you appears. And all of it is nothing but the stream of thoughts for that individual only. The whole of this work, this world, this whole of this inquiry, the whole of finding, the whole of knowing, the whole of doing, the whole of thinking is always for that individual, to that imaginary individual I to whom we have given the reality. This is what Bhagavan is saying. And therefore, no matter what this imaginary I is thinking, instead of pursuing that which appears in the following, in the form of more thoughts, we should diligently inquire to whom is this thought and get back to that first person, the first division, that first imaginary entity that has given horizon by our own volition, by our own inattention to the self. And therefore that becomes available. We will see that to whom is this thought brings us to that it is for me, the I, the idea that I am believed. To me, the one who thinks that it is this body and mind in Sanjay Nagar sitting in meditation. To that person, it is what these thoughts are appearing. Thereupon, Bhagavan asks us to diligently further inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? So that I thought has arisen from the truth. So therefore, if we follow what do I refer to as I, really go to the source of the I thought, then this I thought will disappear. That will be the last thought to disappear. And Bhagavan says, this is a matter which can be experienced. It is not an imagination. We can clearly experience the loss of I. We can clearly be in that state where there is no I at all. And that, Bhagavan says, is the abidance in the truth, Atmanishtata. That Bhagavan is saying that we should repeatedly get back to that state. And with the aid of this inquiry, who am I? Every time a thought rises, we can use that tool to get back to the self, and eventually, when the mind gains enough strength to abide in that true self where there is no knowing, or therefore there cannot be said that there is not knowing also, because it is the sentient one where there is no two. And when we get back to that repeatedly and abide in that state, Bhagavan assures that even the enquiry drops off. It is like a stick used to stir the funeral fire. And once everything is burnt, all the vasanas, the outgoing vasanas are burnt by the ways of inquiry. Even the question, who am I, gets burnt, and the self shines automatically itself as I. This is the direct path of recognizing that truth which alone is, and to remove constantly the imaginary I, the imaginary division, which makes a seeming division become appear real. So Bhagavan has given this tool to remove that seeming division and to repeatedly establish in that one truth which alone is. And with diligent practice, and one would get established in that truth. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we could have come to this most direct path, which establishes us in that one truth which alone is. Let us do Atma Vichara for the next 20 minutes. Sharda Akka.
Namo Ramana, I'll just join in a minute. I'm just getting the connection. Namo Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating on his teachings in the form of self-inquiry. And we also had the blessing of sitting for a session of self-inquiry. In this section of our meditations, we are presently doing manana on the Ramana Gita, which has 18 chapters, compiled by Ganapati Muni, consisting of dialogues which various devotees have had with Bhagavan on self-inquiry and subjects related to self-inquiry. So, we have been doing manana for some time on the Eka Shloki of Bhagavan, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Hyahamaham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati. Hridivisha Manasa Swam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalana Rodhat Atmanishto Bhavatvam. This was the essence or the crux of the second chapter, the second verse in the second chapter, after which Ganapati Muni told us about the significance of this verse, that it contains the essence of all the Vedas and the Vedanta, and it gives us a clear definition of the self and the way to be established in the self. We also saw that Ganapati Muni had in one place said he will be writing a detailed commentary on this verse. And when someone reminded him about it, he said, probably the whole Gita, I will write a Gita on this verse. And the Gita, which he has written on this verse, the Gita is the commentary. The Ramana Gita is the commentary. Bhagavan's own answers to various questions is the commentary. So what do we recognize, or what is revealed to us in this verse by Bhagavan is the significance of abiding in the self. Abide in the self. Atmanishto bhavatvam. Before this we had one chapter, the first chapter of Ramana Gita. Now, if the entire Ramana Gita is a commentary on this verse, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, what was the positioning of the first chapter? Why was this not the first chapter? We would say that, first of all, there has to be a warm-up. There has to be an entry. Our earlier President Sri R. Natarajan would say that even when we sit down for self-inquiry, we can't simply jump headlong into it. So we have the warm-up here also. In our sessions of self-inquiry, we begin with a prayer, and after that we have some reading, and then we have some manana, and then we get into self-inquiry. Because the mind has to get into readiness to dive into the essence. So the Muni has given us an initial chapter to get into the mood, to get ready to receive the crucial experience from Bhagavan, the essence of his teaching from Bhagavan in this Eka Shloki. So in the first chapter, the Muni more or less describes our present condition. He has asked, is it enough to do Satya Satya Viveka? Is it enough to discriminate between the real and the unreal? What is real? What is unreal? The self alone is real. Everything else is unreal. What is that self? That self, as Bhagavan clearly told us in the first part of the conversation also, which Dilip meditated upon for us, there cannot be two eyes, but we wrongly mistake the body to be the eye. So we have to start discriminating, saying, this is not I, this is not I, as Bhagavan has given instructions to Shiva Prakasham Pillai in Who Am I? So we have to start discriminating. And we do that. Now all of us are aware that the body is not the I. All of us know it. Know it. What does it mean to know it? There is one knowing. Bhagavan says, be still and know that I am God. Know and not think. But now what is it that we do? We think I am not the body. We think I am not the mind. We think I am not the intellect. We use the mind itself to become aware of all this. But although this is valid, as Bhagavan says, Vairagya Sadhanam, but it is not a substitute for the direct experience. This is what Bhagavan told us in the first chapter. He said, it's good. Good you know you are not the body. Good you know that you are not the mind. All this will give you dispassion. It will make you unworried or less worried about events in life, about changes in situations, about difficulties which come to this identity. You will not be so worried about the difficulties which come to this identity because you will know this is not my true nature. At least we will be able to think in that way. Similarly, the vicissitudes of the mind, when the mind moves from one emotion to another and it is caught up in so many emotions, we will be able to stand back from our own emotions and say, okay, these are all thoughts, these are all not I, these are all the play of the mind, but I am not the mind. We'll be able to do this. This Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, Arunachala Ashtakam, this is grinding the mind with the mind. It is polishing the mind with the mind. It gives us Vairagya. But it is not a substitute for Upasanam Vina Siddhir Naiva Syat Nirnaya. Bhagavan told us one must be established in the self. Then Bhagavan also gave us in the first chapter the beauty of that state, which is Nirvasana Mauna. It is a silence which is so pure, it is so sweet that there is not even the slightest trace of any tendency rising in it. And it makes one have equality towards all. Sarvabhuta Samatva. There is love for all. There is equality towards all. There are no attachments, no hatreds, no dislikes. So one can get to that state. How? By abiding in the self. Now, what is this self? The question would therefore arise. And Bhagavan says, the self is that which is shining within the heart. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahma matram. The self alone is this satya, asatya. Even there, Bhagavan has hinted to us that the jnani does not think about this is the true self, this is the false self, this is an illusion, because there's nothing apart from the self. So here he is reiterating the essential nature, Kevalam Brahma Matram, and it can be experienced directly in the heart. It is shining there, Sakshat. Directly it can be experienced as I. It is shining, and it can be experienced by one and all. The Upasana, Bhagavan is saying, if I am telling you that Upasana or practice is alone the answer, I will not be giving you a practice which is impossible to attain or impossible to do. It is possible to practice. And what is that practice? That practice is to get in touch. Hridi Visha. Enter the heart. Enter the zone of the self, says Bhagavan. Enter there. Don't be at the periphery. Don't be just roaming around outside. Enter the heart. Hridi Visha. With the mind which is now prepared, which has got dispassion, which has recognized, okay, I am not this body, I am not these thoughts, I am not the intellect discriminating, I am not any of these things. I must know who I am. With a mind which is readied to enter into the self through dispassion, through Satya Viveka, Bhagavan says, now enter. You are already ready, you already have prepared the ground. It is time to enter the heart. Hridi Visha Manasa. How should I enter the heart? You can take any of these routes. You can take self-inquiry as the path. Swam Chinvata. Who is this I? Who is this I? Who is this I? Who is aware of the body? Who is aware of the world? Who is this I? Who is aware of all the sense experiences? Who is this I? Who is aware of the thought? Every experience comes and goes away, but I remain aware of all these. I can remember what happened yesterday. I can remember what happened 10 days ago, 10 years ago. All this is connected by one thread called I. What is this I? Who is this I? I am constantly looking at all the experiences which the I is having. I am not wondering as to who is the I who is having these experiences. Swam Chinvata, says Bhagavan. Swam Chinvata. Or else, Majjata, dive in. Dive into what? That was the question. Disappear into what? That was a question which was asked by the devotee, isn't it? In the first part. Disappear into what? Dive into what? Majjata. Merge into what? Into the source. What is that source? Obviously, there is a source because there is an I which is aware of all the waking experience and all the dream experience. But that I is only aware of non-existence in deep sleep. I didn't know anything, says the I. I was practically not there in deep sleep. So what is it that was there in deep sleep into which this I had disappeared during deep sleep and from which this I is rising at the point of waking? What is that source? Seeking that source as whence am I? One gets back into it. This is Majjata. And holding the breath or being aware of the breath, the movement of the breath, not controlling it, but watching it, one recognizes that that is the way which Bhagavan gives for breath control. By watching the breath, it is a subtle breath which one is watching, not the physical breath. Because Bhagavan says that it rises from the same source as the thought. The physical breath arises from the lungs. It passes through the nostrils. It comes in and out. But this, Bhagavan says, the breath, Shakayor Dvayi Shakti Moolaka. There is only one source for breath and thought. So when one is really watching the breath, one is watching the pranic energy. By physically starting to watch the physical breath, one goes in towards the source. When one watches the breath rising and subsiding into the spiritual heart, one is actually watching the pranic energy rising and subsiding. As one watches, one will automatically be taken to the question of who is the one who is watching. That which is being watched cannot be I. That which is coming in and going out cannot be I. That which knows, which is aware of this, must be the I. Who is that I? So it will take us it will lead us to the self-inquiry, or it will lead us to the source. Where from is this energy of my breath arising? Where into is this energy of my breath subsiding? Because it moves. It is not constantly there. It is rising and subsiding, rising and subsiding. So where from? Where from? So it will lead into whence am I or who am I? This is the path which Bhagavan has given, and he has told us, Hridivisha, enter the heart. Not only enter the heart, Nishtha. Be in Nishtha there. Abide over there. Abide over there. Atma Nishtho Bhavatu. He has told us this. Then what further? Why another 16 chapters? The Ramana Gita has 18 chapters. The first chapter, the introduction was done, the warming up is over, and Bhagavan has asked us to enter the heart. He has given us the path to enter the heart, and he has said all you have to do is stay there. Then what further? There is any room for further thought. But that is the way of the mind. It does not stay. It moves. It finds reason to move. So, all the remaining 16 chapters are only to cut across all the excuses we may make to move away. The various reasons which we may give to not abide in the self, to nullify all those reasons, Bhagavan allows further questions to be asked. And we found in the third chapter, which is very, very important, Bhagavan is being asked, what is the paramount duty? What is the most important duty that I have to perform? All is very well, Bhagavan, to say, Atmanishto Bhava, be abiding in the self, but what of the many duties that I have to perform? You have given me so many duties. You have cast me in a role. You have cast me in a form. You have put me in a particular place. You have given me so many. You have prepared a web of relationships for me. You have prepared a web of a story of events for me. And having done all that, if you now tell me just abide in the self, what happens to all this? Is this not important? Should I not take care of all these duties which you have cast upon me? This is a question which is often asked without remembering, as Dilip said, that all the duties are only for the dream entity. So Bhagavan, without saying that, here he is sweetly declaring the most important duty is to abide in the self. If you really want the highest, if you really want that which is the Uttama, which is Mahat, which is the greatest Mahadichhata. If you have a desire, a strong desire for that which is the ultimate, that which is the highest, that which is the greatest, then I will tell you, don't worry about anything else, because by abiding in the self, you are actually fulfilling all the duties. Because abiding in the self is the fruit of all karmas. It's the fruit of all karmas. So, to fulfill one's duties, what does one do? One engages in some activity, in some karma, and hopes to get some fruit, which will be the fulfillment of the duty. It may be varied, but Bhagavan says, Sarvesham karmanam sarvesham phalanam uta karmanam. That to be abiding in the self is the fruit of all karmas. It's the fruit of all actions. It is the ultimate fruit. So, if one can abide in the self by the grace of the Sadguru, by the grace of the Master, if one can abide in the self, then nothing else needs to be done. In fact, nothing is ever being done by us. That is the truth. So, Bhagavan says, if you are where you need to be, which is Atmanishta, then everything that needs to get done through you will automatically get done through you. You cannot simply sit quiet. You cannot even act. Neither can you act, nor can you simply sit quiet, but for the divine plan and the divine will. So it is that will which is anyhow making one act. It is that will which is anyhow making one sit. But what is this that is required of us? It is to recognize that fact. And how can we really recognize that fact? By recognizing who we truly are. If we are not this entity in the first place, where is the question of this entity doing anything or reaching anywhere or performing any duty? So the highest call for us is to abide in the self. Bhagavan is reiterating this in the 3rd chapter because we need that support. We need that support to get back, because the mind says, this is important, that is important. It brings up many things of importance before us. And we repeatedly need to remind ourselves, yes, everything is important, but what is most important is to abide in the self. By Bhagavan's grace, gradually the import of his words will hit us strongly, and we will recognize the significance of this truth, and then we will be able to turn back with redoubled vigor. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Thank you so much, Srimata. Beautiful. Thank you, Dilip sir.
Namo Apara Satchit Sukhavaridashi Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hridi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hridi Chintayami. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana Dilip. Namo Ramana Nirmala.